like to show you how to make some adjustments to value and color in your portrait. It'd be based on the notes that we made on our note card or notepad or scratch paper, whatever you've got. If you can remember that, that's fine too. But yeah, let's go ahead and make some adjustments to our painting. So I'm going to begin with the right eyelid, darkening that. And for these changes, we're going to probably want to use some small round brushes because these are smaller areas. They're more of a nuance. And let's take some raw umber dark to start with, because I'm just looking at the reference photo and seeing the tone of the color, the tint. It's kind of a cooler tint. So we'll use raw umber dark. And we'll also add just a little bit of naphtha red just to warm it up a bit. And then a tiny bit of raw sienna as well. And we'll just kind of blend those together. And then with that, we'll apply this over the area between her eyebrow and her eye. Oh, and let me show you what this color looks like on the white card. I'm just going to roll this over here a bit. Let's see that. Okay. So, yeah, so this is what it looks like on the white card, just so you can see it. And we're going to apply that over the top. This is actually very transparent at this point. And yes, even though we moved into using semi-opaque glazes, there's not a specific stage in the painting where all of a sudden everything you do has to become semi-opaque. You can use glazes, transparent glazes, very faint glazes, at any stage in your portrait, wherever it's beneficial. You're not bound by any rules. Just give you guidelines that'll help you in the process. So yeah, so it's fine to use a transparent or semi-transparent glaze even at the very end of the painting, because that's just the easiest way to make this adjustment. Now, if I look at it and I notice it looks a little bit grainy, I might follow up with a semi-opaque glaze to smooth it out. But if it's accepting, if the canvas is accepting everything okay, then I'll go ahead and just leave it as is. Sometimes you make these adjustments, you might have to balance some other things out as well. And you might also have to shift the tint of the color, because it looks like the color maybe could be a little bit cooler in tone. It's like possibly it's picking up a little bit of the blue color of her dress. So I might need to introduce a semi-opaque glaze over the top of that just to cool that down a bit. But while that's drying, let's go ahead and make change number 2, which is the shadow under her nose to make that darker. So we just reutilize the same glaze. No need to reinvent the wheel. And we're going to just darken it a bit by adding more raw umber dark. I think I will add a little titanium white here, just so that it ends up being smoother. So then I need to add more raw umber dark to compensate for that. Some naphtha red and raw sienna to compensate for the coolness of the white. So I want to show this to you on the white card. Just put down a little black line so you can see how opaque this actually is. So you can see, because it has that titanium white, it does obscure that black line a little bit, but it's still very translucent. You can see through it quite a bit. So now let's take that and we'll paint underneath the nose, and I'm just going to dab it a little bit, kind of blend it in with my finger using less pressure. So this technique is all about pressure. Brush pressure is a huge component of it. And because you're using a glaze, you can dab it and it works. I mean, if this was opaque, you wouldn't really be able to dab it as effectively. You're just adding a little bit here, a little bit there, kind of touching it and smoothing it out. So I think that would probably work, although you can't always make these changes with one layer. You have to be patient with this process. That darkened it pretty effectively, but there's more nuances that I'll have to do. But I think that gets us much, much closer. What I am going to do is pull from this lighter part of the mixture. So this mixture has a little more matte medium in it and less pigment, not quite as saturated. And then I'm going to use that just to darken the philtrum a little bit as well. Just dab that. All right. So that's good. Now, for the third change, and truly, this does not comprise all the changes I'm going to make in the painting. There will be more. There will be just little nuances I'm going to add here and there. These are just some major changes that I noticed with the value checker tool. But there are some other adjustments that I noticed even without having to use a value checker tool, and that's fine. You don't have to, evaluate everything using the value checker tool. It really is there for your benefit, certainly not for my benefit. I'm not going to be checking in on you to make sure you used it. It's for your benefit, just so that if you need a way to measure it, if you're in doubt on what adjustments to make, you can see where you're off. It's an accurate way to check. But if you evaluate your painting and you can notice those areas that need to be adjusted without the value checker tool, then don't use it. It's just there if you need it. And there are some areas I look at and I can see, yes, I will need to make some changes here and there. So I'll be doing more than just these changes I've demonstrated. But again, that third change would be darkening the background, and that is a pretty lengthy process, and it's going to be a little bit more than I'm going to be able to show in this video here, but I want to at least kind of get that process started. And we could do one of two things. We could darken everything with a glaze, just go over it, or I could kind of selectively darken smaller areas and then develop nuances that way. And I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just kind of, selectively darken certain areas so I can pull out certain features that I see within the trees and, make that look more realistic. And just to show this to you quickly here, here's some of the details we're seeing in the trees, just these little nuances and dark shapes and lighter shapes, and seeing those counties and states, so to speak, like I talked about as a metaphor, just pulling out more of those features, more of those nuances. Even though the background's out of focus, there's still detail in there. There's shapes that we want to see, and I don't quite have them represented in my painting yet. I have the background's still a little more nondescript than it should be, and I want to pull out more features here. So let's do that. And yeah, we'll start the process in this video, and I might have to start another one or do a time lapse to show you what else needs to be accomplished here. So I'm going to start with some ultramarine blue, Indian yellow, bit of raw sienna. Now that gets us a really nice sap green color that I like, but it's going to be a little too strong. So let's see, maybe I'm going to add just a bit of titanium white and create a semi-opaque glaze. And that'll cool it down and smooth it out as we apply it. I'm going to enrich it with some raw sienna to compensate for that loss of vibrance or warmth with the titanium white. We add that raw sienna. Okay, and just see what we have here. It's a nice, rich color. I'm not sure exactly how it's going to work yet on the canvas until I check it out. So I'm going to show this to you on the white card, and here it is on our white card. looks like it could work down here, but the idea is as you get darker, you want to make sure that your colors in general get a little cooler. If they're warmer, they usually won't look right, usually. And as I applied it, it had a little too much yellow in it, so I'm going to need to grab a little more ultramarine blue, cool it down. So obviously I added too much raw sienna to my mixture. I need to cool it down with this. And then let's add some more matte medium, and we'll make it lighter in value by making it more translucent. Because you can lighten it either with titanium white or by making it more translucent. So now here's the color, and it's a little bit lighter, but definitely less yellow. So I think that'll work better. So now we apply that, and again, the rule of darker values is that they generally are less vibrant. They're cooler in tone. If you follow that rule in general, you'll do well. All right. So I'm just darkening selectively a few areas. And this process does take a little time, but we're just going to kind of go over and see some major shapes in the reference photo and apply those. All right, and just want to get that reference image up there so you can see it a little better. Okay, and we're going to continue adding some of these specific shapes, like here, and we're also darkening as well. So we're kind of adjusting and adding more specificity to these shapes here. This whole area here could get a little darker. I'm using a 1/2 inch flat brush, by the way, which works pretty well for changes of this size. Now I know that this leaf can get darker up here. This leaf could get darker. Some of these leaves as well. A little bit darker up in here. Get a little more precision in the shapes. Little shape in here, get that darker. And in here. Okay, we'll darken the leaf as well. And then I'm going to just darken this section right here. There's a little leaf that I missed. We want to get that in there. Now this leaf up here also can get darker too. And we want to make sure we keep the blurriness by, staggering our layers so that you make your layers kind of not go all in the same place and have some layers that went further and some that didn't go as far, that segmented blending technique. And that really will help a lot in creating this sense of the background being out of focus and really causing the subject to look so much more crisp and detailed. Really give it that great sense of depth of field and realism. All right, and we're going to just continue darkening with the same color. I'm just using the same color here, and I'm finding it's working very, very well. It all depends on how much brush pressure I use. So if I really kind of put it on lightly, I can get a sense of very smoky effect. But if I put down more, you know, it's going to get a lot darker. I have to lift it up if it's not what I want, if it ends up looking too dark. Here we're going to get some darker tonal values here. Try to, again, create some of these shapes. Reload my brush there and continue this process, darkening a few key areas, using a little more pressure here for this large area, and I hold my brush kind of perpendicular to the canvas to let a lot of paint get on there, and then smooth it out, change the angle. Here we'll get a little bit more detail, so I hold my brush perpendicular and at an angle, so I'm using just the tip to get in some of the shapes of these stems and little leaves and things like that. This works well if you have a good foundation on there. If you haven't put down enough layers, then doing this kind of technique doesn't necessarily work as well. If you have a lot of layers down, you can build up some great depth. Okay, we'll blend in here a little bit. Blend in there a little bit, up there. Now I just want to darken this lower corner. All right, and now that I've done, these additional glazes with this tone, it is possible then to go back after this dries with a darker tone and really put in some darker values over the darkest values and make them pop even more. But I think this is sufficient to show you and demonstrate, how you can make these adjustments to your tonal values. And we're going to continue the process, down the three-step process I showed you at the beginning of this lesson. And we'll be working on form and making adjustments to form as well. So I'm looking forward to teaching you more and helping you bring the portrait home.